My daughter married a young millionaire. Everyone admired them. What a perfect couple. At the wedding, during our dance, she quietly slipped an envelope into my pocket and whispered, "Dad, please help me." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The fork paused halfway to Michael Bradford's mouth. My future son-in-law was staring at my living room wall again, his eyes tracking to the corner where I kept my desk. "You know, James," he said, setting down the fork with theatrical precision, "with your retirement savings just sitting in some bank account earning nothing, I could show you real opportunities. My fintech connections could triple your returns." My daughter Amanda, sitting beside him at my dining table, shifted uncomfortably. Her hand found her water glass. I smiled, the way I'd learned to smile during 40 years of watching people try to sell me forgeries. "That's kind of you, Michael, but at my age, I prefer boring and safe." He laughed, too loud for my small Richmond district dining room. "Boring and safe. That's exactly the problem with your generation. Money should work for you." 6 months ago, Amanda had brought him home for the first time. I remembered standing in this same doorway, watching him park his Tesla with unnecessary drama, the chrome gleaming like a promise. He'd gripped my hand with the enthusiasm of a politician, his watch catching the light. Expensive brand, no scratches, fresh from the store. While Amanda made coffee, I'd watched him survey my house the way auction appraisers examine estate sales, cataloging and calculating. "Successful fintech entrepreneur," Amanda had whispered to me in the kitchen, her eyes bright with hope. "He has an office in the financial district." I'd nodded, noting how his designer suit hung too perfectly, no wear at the cuffs. New money trying to look like old money, except Michael Bradford had neither. Now, 2 weeks before their wedding, he was leaning back in my chair like he already owned it. "I'm serious, James. You could be making real money instead of consulting for whatever you charge. What is it, like $50 an hour?" Amanda's face flushed. "Michael, I'm just saying your dad's worked hard his whole life. He deserves better returns." I stood collecting plates with deliberate calm. "Anyone want more wine?" Michael excused himself to the bathroom. I watched his reflection in the dark window as he paused by my desk, his phone out, angling for a shot of the papers I'd deliberately left visible. Bank statements for my checking account, the one that showed a comfortable but unimpressive balance. He didn't photograph the shelf above, where my stamp album sat dismissed as an old man's hobby. When he returned, Amanda was helping me in the kitchen. Through the partially open door, I heard him on his phone. "85,000 for a wedding," he said, his voice carrying that particular satisfaction of someone who thinks they're getting away with something. The old man's loaded. A pause. Jennifer, probably. His sister, my daughter's new best friend. "Just be patient," a woman's voice confirmed through the speaker. "Amanda's the key." "I know," Michael said. "She trusts me completely." I rinsed a dish, the water running cold over my hands. Amanda was laughing at something on her phone, oblivious, happy. I'd spent $85,000 on their wedding at Meadowood Napa Valley Resort because she'd looked at the venue photos with such joy. I'd written checks for upgrades, for Jennifer's vendor contacts, for every suggestion Michael made while he and his sister exchanged glances I wasn't supposed to notice. After they left, Amanda hugging me at the door with genuine warmth, I sat alone with my stamp collection. The penny black under my magnifying glass was worth $180,000 by itself. The full collection, assembled over 30 years as JS in the international art and collectibles market, was worth $8 million. Michael had glanced at these albums once, made a dismissive comment about old stamps, and never looked again. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Jessica Martinez's number. My old friend and attorney answered on the second ring. "James, it's late." "I need you to keep an ear out about someone," I said. "Don't explain why yet. Just listen." "Who?" "Michael Bradford. Says he's a fintech entrepreneur with an office in the financial district." Jessica was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into lawyer mode. "I'll make some calls." I hung up, returned to my stamps. 40 years in the art world had taught me to spot a fake from across the room. Michael Bradford's performance was good, but not that good. The question wasn't whether he was a fraud. The question was what exactly he was after. I thought about Amanda's text from earlier. Dad, I'm so happy. The wedding was in 2 weeks. I could stop it now, confront them, shut it down. But I'd learned patience in my years of acquiring rare pieces. You don't grab at the first offer. You wait, you watch, you let the other party reveal their full hand. I closed the stamp album, my hand resting on millions of dollars Michael had dismissed as worthless. Whatever he was planning, I'd let it play out, just long enough to see the full picture. Then I'd act. The game was already in motion. Michael just didn't know he was playing against a master. The Meadowood Napa Valley Resort looked like something from a wedding magazine, all oak trees and stone pathways with vineyard views stretching toward the hills. March sunshine filtered through the leaves, warm but not hot. Perfect weather that money can't buy but luck sometimes provides. 180 guests filled the reception hall, champagne glasses catching light, laughter rising in waves that should have felt joyful. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching my daughter Amanda in her wedding dress, and felt the wrongness of it all settle in my chest like a stone. She looked beautiful, radiant even. The dress fit perfectly, her hair swept up the way she'd planned for months. But when the band started playing and the guests cleared the floor for our father-daughter dance, I saw what no one else did. Her hands were trembling as she placed them on my shoulders. "Dad," she whispered, her smile frozen for the cameras. I took her hand, began the slow rotation expected of us. 200 eyes watching, $85,000 creating this perfect moment, and Amanda's fingers shaking against mine like bird wings. She leaned close, her voice barely audible over the music. "Read it when you're alone. Please, Dad." The envelope slipped into my jacket pocket so smoothly that I almost missed it. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. Desperate, apologetic, terrified. I kept dancing, kept smiling, finished the song. Then I kissed her forehead and walked with measured steps toward the restroom, my heart hammering against my ribs. The lock clicked. I braced my hands on the marble counter, pulled out the envelope with fingers that had gone suddenly cold. Hotel stationery. Amanda's handwriting, shaky but clear. "Dad, help me. 3 days ago, I overheard Michael on the phone with Jennifer. He said he's marrying me for your money, that I'm an easy target, and that after the wedding, he'll convince me to put you in a nursing home to access your savings." I didn't know what to do. Everything's paid for, everyone's here. Please stop this. I read it twice. In the mirror, my reflection changed. Something shifted behind my eyes. A hardness that hadn't been there in 15 years, not since I'd stepped away from the art world's brutal negotiations and chosen a quiet life for Amanda's sake. I remembered teaching her to dance when she was 7, her small feet balanced on my shoes, trusting me to keep her safe. That trust had never wavered, not when her mother left, not through all the years of modest living while I hid what I really had, not even now when she could have run, could have canceled everything herself. She'd trusted me to protect her. One more time. I folded the note with precise movements, tucked it back in my pocket, straightened my tie. When I opened the bathroom door, I was someone different, someone Michael Bradford should have researched more carefully. The reception hall buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. I found Michael at the bar, surrounded by 3 friends in rental tuxedos, all of them laughing at something he'd just said. "Old man's money well spent, right?" Michael's voice carried over the crowd. "At least the free booze is top shelf." His friends laughed. One of them clapped him on the shoulder. "You're terrible, Bradford." "I'm smart," Michael said, grinning. "There's a difference. I give it 6 months before we have full access to his accounts. Amanda'll sign anything I ask." I was standing 10 feet behind him. Several guests had noticed me, their expressions shifting from amusement to discomfort. Michael didn't see their faces change, too drunk on his own cleverness and expensive whiskey. I walked to the stage where the band had set up. The microphone was there, waiting. I picked it up. The music stopped, mid-note. Silence crashed over the reception hall like a wave. "This wedding is canceled." My voice came out calm, cold, absolute. "Immediately." 180 faces turned toward me. Michael's confusion was almost comical. His mouth open, glass halfway to his lips, his brain trying to process what was happening. "I have information that makes this marriage impossible." I let the words hang there, let them sink in. "Amanda, come with me." "Wait, what?" Michael's face drained of color. James, you can't just... I looked at him. Just looked. He stopped talking. Jennifer appeared beside her brother, her hand gripping his arm, her expression frozen in horror. She knew. Somehow she knew I'd found out. Amanda was already moving toward me, her dress rustling, tears streaming down her face. I extended my hand. She took it. We walked through 180 stunned guests. Phones were coming out now, cameras capturing everything. Michael's voice rose behind us, stammering protests that convinced no one. Amanda! Amanda! Wait! Your father's confused. He doesn't understand. Jennifer hissed something at him. Shut up. Don't make it worse. How could it be worse? He knows. Somehow, he knows. The parking lot air hit us cool and clean. I opened my car door for Amanda, looked back once at the resort entrance. Michael burst through, Jennifer trying to pull him back, guests spilling out with phones raised like witnesses at a crime scene. I drove away. In the rearview mirror, Michael on his knees on the pavement, Jennifer's horrified face, 180 people watching his world collapse. Amanda cried quietly in the passenger seat. I reached over, squeezed her hand. It's going to be okay, I said simply. But first, they need to understand they made a very serious mistake. The car turned onto the highway, leaving Napa Valley behind. I woke at 5 the next morning, my bedroom still dark. Amanda was asleep down the hall in her childhood room, the one I'd kept exactly as she'd left it when she moved out at 25. I made coffee in the quiet kitchen, the ritual movements automatic, while my mind cataloged what needed to happen next. Michael Bradford had tried to con my daughter, had planned to institutionalize me. The wedding had cost me $85,000 I'd never see again. I sat at my desk, pulled out Amanda's note from yesterday, read it one more time. The paper trembled slightly in my hand, not from fear, from controlled fury that needed direction, needed purpose. I texted my attorney and old friend, Jessica Martinez. Need to see you. This morning. Urgent. Her response came within 2 minutes. My office, 9 a.m. Jessica's law firm occupied the 15th floor of a building on Montgomery Street in the financial district. I'd known her for 30 years since she was a junior associate, and I was building my art collection under a pseudonym. She'd helped me structure my anonymity when I decided to step back from that world, to live quietly for Amanda's sake. Her corner office overlooked the bay, morning light turning the water silver. She stood when I entered, her expression already serious. Jessica had excellent instincts for reading emergencies. I handed her Amanda's note without preamble. She read it twice, her jaw tightening. Elder financial abuse. That's a felony in California. But we need evidence beyond this note. We need to know who we're dealing with. That's why I'm here. I need everything on Michael Bradford and his sister Jennifer. Jessica pulled out a legal pad, started writing. I'll start with public records, civil cases, credit reports where accessible. But James, if this goes legal, there are protective measures we should implement immediately, for you and for Amanda, whatever it takes. She looked at me and I saw recognition in her eyes. She remembered who I really was, what I was really worth. They picked the wrong target. Yes, I said. They did. That afternoon, I walked next door to my neighbor Bob Chen's house. Bob was 70, retired from the San Francisco Chronicle after 40 years of investigative journalism. We played chess every Wednesday evening, had for the past decade. He answered the door in his usual cardigan, reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. James, you look terrible. Can I come in? Over tea in his cluttered living room, books everywhere, old newspapers stacked in corners, I told him everything. Not about my hidden wealth, just the basics. Michael had tried to con Amanda, planned to manipulate her into putting me in a nursing home. The wedding disaster. Bob's reporter instincts activated immediately. His eyes sharpened, his posture straightened. Give me 3 days. If there's dirt, I'll find it. Bob, I can't pay... He waved me off. You think I'd charge for this? Some punk tries to institutionalize my chess partner? I still have sources everywhere. Courthouse contacts, financial records access. This is what I do. The next 2 weeks moved with brutal efficiency. Jessica called on day 4. Michael has 3 outstanding business loans totaling $1.5 million, all with different institutions. Bob stopped by on day 7 with a printout from a Nevada contact. Las Vegas casino debts. $800,000 through a high roller line of credit he defaulted on. Jessica again, day 9. IRS tax liens. $300,000. And Jennifer Bradford has $400,000 in debts from failed real estate deals. Bob delivered his full dossier on day 12, setting a manila folder on my kitchen table with satisfaction. The Tesla, leased. The financial district office. $500 a month for a co-working desk. His startup filed bankruptcy 14 months ago. And here's the interesting part. He was engaged 2 years ago to a woman from a wealthy Marin County family. Engagement ended suddenly with a sealed settlement. I opened the folder, studied the documentation, tax records, business filings, court documents, credit reports obtained through Bob's various legitimate channels. Michael Bradford's entire fraudulent life laid bare in 50 pages. There's a pattern, I said quietly. Oh yeah, this isn't his first rodeo. You want me to push deeper? Not yet. Let me think about how to use this. By mid-April, I sat in my home office with evidence folders spread across my desk. Jessica visited that evening with legal strategies, restraining orders, fraud documentation, protective measures for my assets. Bob had brought me contact information for his old colleagues, still working at Bay Area newspapers, people who specialized in business fraud stories. I studied Michael's photo from a Facebook printout Bob had included. Young, handsome, confident smile. The smile of someone who thought he was cleverer than everyone around him. You thought I was just an old man with some savings, I said to the photo. Big mistake. Amanda appeared in the doorway with tea. Dad? You've been in here for hours. I closed the folders. Just some paperwork. She set the cup beside me, hesitated. Are you okay? You've been so quiet. I'm gathering information. When you move against someone, you need to know everything. Move against? What are you planning? I looked at my daughter, 33 years old, a school teacher, kind and trusting and hurt by someone who'd used those qualities against her. Justice, I said simply. He tried to use you, tried to cage me. That requires consequences, but first, I need the full picture. She nodded slowly, kissed the top of my head, left me to my work. I opened my laptop, pulled up an email I'd drafted earlier. Richard Preston, VP at Wells Fargo, someone I'd helped years ago authenticate a disputed Rothko for the bank's art holdings. Time to cash in that favor. I typed carefully. Richard, hope you're well. Wondering if you might review some concerning information about potentially fraudulent loan documentation. I attached a file Bob had prepared. Just facts. No accusations. Sent it. My phone buzzed. Michael's number, another attempt to call Amanda. I watched it ring through to voicemail. Let him wonder, let him worry. The trap was set. Tomorrow, the first piece would fall. 4 days into our investigation period, my doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Michael Bradford stood on my porch with grocery store flowers, the cheap kind wrapped in cellophane, not the expensive arrangements he'd brought when he was courting Amanda. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. James, his smile looked rehearsed, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Whatever you heard, whatever Amanda said, we can work this out. I love your daughter. No misunderstanding, I said, my voice flat and cold. No workout. No second chances. Don't come back. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a full minute, his face cycling through confusion, anger, calculation. He was sweating despite the cool morning. His clothes looked cheaper, too, the designer labels replaced with department store brands. The pressure was already showing. April 15th arrived with perfect irony. Tax day fitting for a man with $300,000 in IRS liens. Richard Preston at Wells Fargo had reviewed my concerning information and made discreet inquiries to the 3 lending institutions that had given Michael his startup loans. All 3 discovered simultaneously that Michael's loan applications contained fabricated income statements and forged tax documents. 3 certified letters hit Michael's mailbox at once. I wasn't there to see it, but Bob's source at one of the banks described the phone calls that followed. Michael's voice rising from confusion to panic, demanding to speak with supervisors, insisting there must be mistakes. There were no mistakes. Just $2.3 million in loans being called immediately, 30-day deadline, or face legal action and bankruptcy proceedings. Michael called Jennifer from the bank's parking lot. Bob's contact heard him shouting into his phone through the glass doors. That evening, Jennifer showed up at my door. I didn't answer, just watched through the camera as she rang the bell repeatedly, finally leaving a handwritten note wedged in the doorframe. "We need to talk about Amanda's future. This is between adults." I tore it in half, threw it away. The next day, an anonymous tip reached Bob's old colleague at the SF Bay Observer's business section. Just information about concerning patterns in local startup financing and authorities reviewing potentially fraudulent loan applications in the fintech sector. Vague enough to be legal, specific enough that people in Michael's circle connected the dots. His scheduled meeting with a potential investor got canceled via text. His co-working space manager sent an email reviewing lease agreements due to member complaints. The Tesla leasing company sent a late payment notice. His automatic payment had bounced. Everything was closing in. I maintained my normal routine. Morning walks through Golden Gate Park. Chess with Bob on Wednesday evening. Cooking dinner for Amanda, who was slowly recovering her equilibrium. Bob dropped by on Saturday with updates, speaking quietly while Amanda was in the shower. "Your friend's startup office? They asked him to vacate. Too many complaints from other members about his business practices." "Word travels fast in small business communities," I said, "especially when someone makes sure it travels." Bob's eyes twinkled. "You want me to push harder?" "No. Let it develop naturally. Desperation makes people careless. He'll make mistakes." That evening, Amanda and I sat at the kitchen table with tea. She'd been quiet all day, staring at her phone occasionally, like she expected it to ring. "Michael came by last week, didn't he?" she asked. "The doorbell camera recorded something." "He did. I sent him away." "How do you feel about that?" She was quiet for a moment. "Relieved. Also sad. I really thought—" She shook her head. "But I heard what he said to Jennifer. I know what he planned." I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "You were kind. He took advantage. That's on him, not you. Remember that." Meanwhile, across the city, Michael and Jennifer were spiraling. Bob had a contact in Michael's apartment building, a maintenance worker who occasionally overheard conversations through thin walls. Michael pacing his living room at midnight, Jennifer's voice sharp with stress, calculator out, bills spread across his table showing impossible math. 3 separate institutions, Jennifer had said. Same day? Someone made this happen? Who? The old man? Michael's laugh was brittle. He's a retired consultant living in Richmond. What power does he have? What do we actually know about him? I researched him. Public records show a modest pension, Social Security, small consulting income. He lives in a house worth maybe $800,000. He's nobody. But doubt was creeping in. I could feel it, the way you feel weather changing. They decided to fight back, to sue me for emotional damages from the canceled wedding. Jennifer's idea, probably. She was slightly smarter than her brother. He'll settle to avoid publicity, she'd said. We get something, pay down the debts. Michael had agreed immediately. Yeah, he's old. He'll cave. Fatal miscalculation. The email from Jessica Martinez arrived on a Tuesday evening. They're suing you. I opened the attachment. Michael Bradford was seeking $500,000 in emotional damages and lost wages from the canceled wedding. Jennifer had added her own claim for $100,000 in lost wedding planning fees and reputation damage. I started laughing, actually laughing, a sound that felt strange after weeks of controlled tension. Amanda appeared in the doorway of my office, worried. Dad? I looked up, wiping my eyes. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They're taking me to court. Her face fell. That's not funny. Don't worry. I was still smiling. They brought a knife to a gunfight, and they don't even know I'm armed. I forwarded the lawsuit to Jessica with one line. Time to show them who they're dealing with. Her response came immediately. Finally, I've been waiting for this. I closed my laptop, looked around my modest office, the Keith Haring print on the wall. Amanda thought it was a poster, didn't know it was an original worth more than Michael's entire claim damages. My stamp collection and albums on the shelf, 8 million in philatelic rarities, disguised as an old man's hobby. Tomorrow, The real fight would begin, and Michael Bradford had absolutely no idea what was coming. Amanda had been living with me for nearly a month. She moved through my house like a ghost, quiet and withdrawn, processing everything that had happened. I gave her space, cooked meals she barely touched, and waited. One evening she sat across from me at the dining table. The sun was setting through the Richmond district fog, casting everything in gray-blue light. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you want to know exactly what I heard? The full conversation?" I set down my tea. "Only if you're ready to tell me." She nodded, her hands wrapped around her own cup like she was cold. "I need to say it out loud. I need you to understand why I couldn't go through with it." "I'm listening." She took a breath. 3 days before the wedding, I was at Michael's apartment. We were finalizing last-minute details. Seating charts, timeline stuff. I went to shower. Her voice dropped. Michael thought I couldn't hear him. He was on speakerphone with Jennifer. I heard everything through the bathroom door. I stayed very still. He said, "The old fool spent 85 grand on this wedding. Can you imagine how much more he's sitting on?" Amanda's voice cracked slightly. "He called you a fool, Dad." "Let him," I said quietly. "Fools are underestimated. That works in my favor," she continued, the words coming faster now, like she needed to expel them. "Jennifer asked if you'd just hand over money." Michael laughed. He said, "Not directly, but Amanda will. After the wedding, I convince her that Daddy's getting too old to live alone. Memory issues, safety concerns, you know the script. Nursing home, full financial guardianship through Amanda. She loves me. She'll sign anything I ask. Access to his accounts. Done." My jaw tightened, but I didn't interrupt. Jennifer asked what if you fought it. Michael said, "Then we lawyer up. Competency hearing. The guy's 65, lives alone, no other family. Easy case. Amanda gives me power of attorney. We're golden." Amanda was crying now, quietly. "I stood in that shower, Dad. The water went cold. And I listened to the man I loved plan to cage you like an animal, to use me to do it." I moved around the table, pulled her close. She sobbed against my shoulder, the first real cry she'd allowed herself since the wedding disaster. "The next 3 days were the worst of my life," she whispered when she could speak. "I couldn't tell anyone. Everything was paid for. Everyone was coming. You were so happy for me. I kept thinking maybe I'd misheard. Maybe there was some explanation, but I knew. I knew what he was." "You saved both of us," I said firmly. "You were brave when it mattered most." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "That note. I wrote it 12 times. The dance was my only chance. I knew if anyone could fix this, it was you." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I made a decision. "Amanda, there's something you should know about me, about who I was before you were born." I took her to my study, a room she rarely entered, respecting it as my private space. I opened a cabinet, revealing authentication certificates, insurance documents, auction records. For 25 years, I was known as JS in the art world, a legendary dealer and collector. I built one of the most valuable private modern art collections on the West Coast. She stared at the documents, not understanding yet. I pointed to the herring print above the fireplace. "That's not a poster. It's an original, worth about $2.5 million. Her eyes went wide. I opened the stamp albums on my shelf. "This collection is worth $8 million. The total value of everything I own, including some pieces in storage, over $50 million. Amanda sat down hard in my desk chair. $50 million? After your mother passed, I chose to live modestly. I wanted you to grow up normal, not spoiled, not a target." I smiled without humor. "Though you became one anyway." She started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound mixed with tears. "He was going to steal from you. He thought you had maybe $500,000 saved, and you actually have considerably more. Yes. He has no idea who he's actually dealing with." "Not yet," I said. "But he will. When the time is right, everyone will know." She looked at me with new eyes, seeing not just her father, but someone else entirely, someone capable of things she'd never imagined. "What are you going to do?" I thought about Michael Bradford's voice on that recording, planning to lock me away, planning to use my daughter's love as a weapon. What I should have done the moment I suspected something was wrong. I'm going to make sure he never tries this with anyone else's family, and I'm going to teach both of them that wisdom beats youth every single time. "How can I help?" I smiled. Document everything. If he contacts you, record it if legal, or write down exactly what was said. I already started. After the wedding, he called 5 times before I blocked him. I saved the voicemails. The texts, too. Smart? That's exactly what we need. You're stronger than you think, sweetheart. She hugged me again, this time not crying, but fierce. Dad, I'm sorry. I brought him into our lives. Stop. You fell in love with who he pretended to be. He's a professional con artist. That's not your fault. But what if he tries again? With someone else? I held her at arm's length, looked her in the eye. He won't. By the time I'm done, Michael Bradford won't be able to con a fortune cookie. I promise you that. Later that night, after Amanda had gone to bed, emotionally exhausted but also relieved, I sat alone in my study. My phone showed Michael's blocked texts to Amanda, each one more desperate than the last. The final one sent that morning. Amanda, please, I need to talk to you. Your father has no idea what he's started. I have rights too. My phone buzzed. Email from Jessica Martinez, sent late. Heads up, they filed against you today. Lawsuit for $500K emotional damages. Jennifer added $100K. Documents attached. This is actually perfect for us. I opened the attachments, read through Michael's legal complaint. Emotional language about traumatic public humiliation, broken promises, elderly man's irrational behavior. I read it twice, then started to laugh. A real laugh, genuine and dark. Michael thought threatening legal action would scare an old man into settling. Thought $500,000 would make me go away quietly. He had no idea he'd just handed me the perfect weapon. I forwarded the documents to Bob. You're going to enjoy this. Then I texted Jessica. Let's destroy them. I sat in a room worth tens of millions and thought about a con artist who'd tried to cage a lion. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The process server arrived during breakfast. Official documents, thick envelope, Superior Court of California seal. Michael Bradford versus James Smith. Claim $500,000 for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Breach of promise. Public humiliation. Jennifer Bradford's addendum. $100,000 for lost wedding planning fees and professional damages. Amanda watched nervously as I read through the complaint. I was calm. Too calm. I called Jessica. They sued me. Her voice was gleeful. I know. I already have the documents. Can you come to my office in an hour? We're going to have some fun. At Morrison & Associates, Jessica's conference room overlooked the financial district, glass and steel towers stretching toward the bay. She spread Michael's lawsuit across the polished table. This is the best gift they could have given us. Her eyes gleamed with professional satisfaction. By filing suit, they opened the door for discovery. We get to subpoena everything. Bank records, communications, past relationships, and we counter with elder financial abuse charges. That's a felony in California. How fast can you move? I already filed for an emergency restraining order this morning. Hearings this afternoon. Judge is going to love this. She pulled out Amanda's recording transcript, the evidence Bob had compiled. Documentation of Michael's debts. We're countersuing for $5 million, Jessica said. And yes, I'm serious. That seems California Welfare and Institutions Code 15610. 30. Elder financial abuse. Targeting someone 65 or older. Penalties include criminal charges, civil damages up to 3 times actual harm, plus attorney fees. You're 65. He planned to institutionalize you for your money. We have it on recording. $5 million is conservative. By 3 that afternoon, we stood in Superior Court. Michael and Jennifer appeared with an attorney who looked like he'd taken the case that morning. Cheap suit, disorganized papers, the unmistakable air of someone realizing he was outmatched. The judge reviewed Jessica's emergency filing, Amanda's note, the recorded conversation transcript, evidence of Michael's debts, fraudulent loan applications, the pattern with his previous ex-fiancée. Michael's attorney tried to argue this was a private family dispute. The judge cut him off. This is alleged elder abuse. California takes this seriously. She looked directly at Michael. Mr. Bradford, I've reviewed the evidence. Your alleged plan to institutionalize Mr. Smith to access his assets is deeply concerning. Michael's attorney stammered, Your Honor, that's taken out of context. Counselor, I have a recording transcript. Nursing home, full financial guardianship, access to his accounts. What context makes that acceptable? Silence. That's what I thought. Jessica stood, presented our countersuit. Fraud. Attempted financial abuse of an elder. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Conspiracy. 5 million in damages. Plus immediate restraining order. 100 yards minimum distance from James Smith and Amanda Smith. Michael's face drained of color. Jennifer looked like she might be sick. The judge ruled from the bench. Mr. Bradford, Ms. Bradford, I'm granting a temporary restraining order, effective immediately. You are not to contact, approach within 100 yards, or communicate in any way with James Smith or Amanda Smith pending full hearing. This includes phone, email, text, social media, or third-party contact. Violation will result in immediate arrest. She looked down at her papers. Furthermore, I'm scheduling a preliminary hearing on the countersuit for May 15th. Mr. Bradford, given the evidence presented, I strongly advise you to secure competent legal counsel. This is serious. Michael tried to speak. I'm done, Mr. Bradford. Next case. Jessica and I stood. Michael and Jennifer remained seated, stunned. Their attorney was frantically taking notes, finally understanding how badly this had gone. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine harsh after the dim courtroom, we walked toward Jessica's car. Michael and Jennifer emerged moments later, standing on the courthouse steps, exactly 100 yards away by law. I could see them clearly. Michael was on his phone, probably calling other attorneys. Jennifer was crying, the first time I'd seen her crack. I leaned on my walking stick. I didn't need it, but it emphasized my age nicely. Then I turned, looked directly at them across the plaza, made eye contact with Michael, raised one hand in a small, cold wave, then smiled. Michael saw it. Our eyes met across the distance. In that moment, something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Fear. The beginning of understanding that he wasn't fighting a scared old man, but someone who'd planned for this, who'd wanted this. I turned away, said something quiet to Jessica. She laughed. We walked to her car. Behind us, Michael and Jennifer stood frozen on the courthouse steps, beginning to understand they were in a fight they couldn't win. In the car, Jessica was already planning. May 15th, 10 days. They need to find a real attorney, which costs money they don't have. Meanwhile, the restraining order keeps them away from you and Amanda, and I'm sending everything to the district attorney tomorrow. Will they fight or fold? Michael's ego says fight. His empty bank account says fold. Either way, we win. That evening, Bob called. The courthouse filing is public. I have friends at the Chronicle who might be interested in a story about elder financial abuse attempts. Want me to plant seeds? Not yet. Let Michael make the next mistake first. He will. Desperation guarantees it. After hanging up, I sat with my stamp collection, examined a rare Victorian-era stamp worth $150,000 through my magnifying glass. Steady hands, clear mind. Michael and Jennifer were beginning to realize they'd picked a fight with someone who had patience, resources, and nothing to lose. The restraining order meant they couldn't get close. The countersuit meant they were bleeding money they didn't have. The court date on May 15th meant they had 10 days to figure out an impossible situation. I placed the stamp carefully in its protective case. I'd built this collection over decades through patience and precision. Taking apart Michael Bradford's life would require the same skills, and I had plenty of time. Michael, on the other hand, had 10 days before everything collapsed. The clock was ticking, and I was watching every second. 3 days after the court hearing, Bob Chen's column appeared in the SF Bay Observer. The headline read, "Elder Financial Abuse, a Growing Threat in San Francisco." He didn't name Michael or Jennifer directly, but he described a recent case involving a 35-year-old entrepreneur who allegedly planned to institutionalize his fiancée's 65-year-old father to access retirement savings. The details were specific: canceled wedding at Meadowood, court documents, restraining order. Anyone in their social circle would recognize the story. Within 48 hours, the article had been shared across local social media 700 times. Michael's remaining business contacts saw it. Jennifer's real estate clients saw it. The whisper campaign became a roar. "They're finished socially," Bob told me over chess that Wednesday. My sources say Jennifer's under investigation by the California Department of Real Estate. Michael got evicted from his co-working space. I moved my night, considering, what about the bankruptcy? Creditors filed for Chapter 7 proceedings the day after the May 15th deadline passed. Everything they have, which isn't much, gets liquidated. Bob captured my bishop. Tesla was repossessed last week. Michael had to Uber to his bankruptcy attorney consultation. Couldn't afford the retainer. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. 2 weeks later, I stood in the DeYoung Museum in Golden Gate Park, surrounded by San Francisco society at its finest. The charity auction for the Elder Financial Protection Fund had drawn tech executives, old money families, philanthropists who shaped the city's cultural landscape. I'd helped organize it through my art world connections, still not revealing I was JS, just a concerned donor who'd learned about this issue recently. My contribution, an early Banksy print, authenticated, valued at $800,000. Amanda stood beside me, elegant in a simple black dress. She'd been healing over the past weeks, growing stronger. Tonight, she held her head high. "Dad," she whispered, "half the people here are staring at us." Let them. We're supporting an important cause. During the speeches, a speaker told a story remarkably similar to mine. A man in his 30s who'd planned to institutionalize his girlfriend's father to steal retirement savings. No names given, but people in the room connected the dots. I'd arranged it through the organizers. I saw the looks, the knowing glances, the whispered conversations. Michael and Jennifer weren't here, of course, but they'd see the social media posts tomorrow, the photos of the glittering crowd, the Banksy piece, the people discussing elder abuse with pointed implications. "That Banksy you donated," Amanda said later, examining the auction catalog, "that was worth $800,000? According to the estimate. Michael thought you had maybe $500,000 total. You just gave away more than that." I smiled. It went to a good cause. And it made a point. The next morning, Jessica called with updates. Michael and Jennifer both filed bankruptcy separately. Smart move on Jennifer's part. She's trying to distance herself from him legally. What about our countersuit? Bankruptcy court takes precedence, but our judgment stands. They'll never be able to pay it, but it follows them forever. Credit destroyed, employment impacted. They'll feel this for years. I'm not trying to collect money from them. I'm trying to make sure they never do this again. Mission accomplished. No bank will touch them. No legitimate employer will hire them for any position of trust. Bob's sources reported their deterioration in detail. Michael and Jennifer had moved in together temporarily. Both broke, both unemployed, sharing his studio apartment. The arrangement lasted 2 weeks before it exploded. "They're screaming at each other nightly," Bob told me. "My contact in the building says the neighbor filed a noise complaint." I don't take pleasure in their suffering. You shouldn't. But you should know. Jennifer moved out yesterday, crashed with a friend in the sunset. The partnership is over. They're blaming each other. Predictable. Shared guilt destroys relationships. They couldn't face what they'd done together. Then Michael's letter arrived. Amanda brought it to me, her expression uncertain. It came through Sarah, my friend from teaching. He asked her to give it to me. He's not supposed to contact me directly because of the restraining order. I read it. Emotional, well-written, manipulative. Michael claimed Jennifer had pushed him into everything, said his feelings for Amanda were real, begged for one meeting to explain. Amanda watched my face. I'm thinking about meeting him, just to give him closure. Every protective instinct screamed no. Absolutely not. It was dangerous. He'd manipulate her. But I remembered Jessica's advice from weeks ago. You can't shield her forever. She needs to make this choice and see who he really is. I made a difficult decision. You're an adult. This is your choice. But if you meet him, it's in a public place during daylight, and I'll be close by. She nodded slowly. Blue Bottle on Hayes Street, Saturday afternoon. I called Bob. I need you at the cafe. Discreet. Recording device for safety. Already planning it. To Jessica. The restraining order, if Amanda initiates contact, that's legal. Yes, but if he becomes threatening, it's grounds for arrest. I'll have SFPD aware of the situation. Saturday arrived. I positioned myself across from Blue Bottle in my car where Amanda could see me through the window. Bob sat inside at a corner table with a newspaper and discreet recording equipment. We'd arranged a signal. If Amanda placed her coffee cup at the edge of the table, I'd enter immediately. Through the cafe window, I watched Michael arrive first. He looked terrible. Unshaven, worn clothes, hollow-eyed. When Amanda walked in, he stood with what appeared to be genuine tears. I couldn't hear the conversation. Could only watch body language. Wait. Trust my daughter's strength. 15 minutes passed. 20. Then Amanda stood abruptly, placed her cup at the table's edge. I was out of the car and crossing the street before she reached the door. She walked straight to me, her expression clear and resolved. Not crying, not shaken, clear-eyed. We got in the car, sat in silence. Finally, she spoke. You were right, about all of it. He asked me to get money from you. Even now, broke and desperate, it was about money. I took her hand. I'm sorry you had to see it. I'm not sorry. I needed to see it myself. Now I know. Bob called as we drove home. Got everything on audio. He violated the restraining order spirit by trying to use her to reach you, and he admitted hearing rumors about your wealth. That evening, Jessica called. The DA is filing charges. Tax fraud, loan fraud, attempted elder financial abuse. They want you to testify. Preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. Will I have to explain my resources? If Michael's attorney tries to claim you're exaggerating? Yes. This is when the JS reveal happens. Your choice? Amanda was listening. She nodded at me. Do it, Dad. Let everyone know who you really are. You've hidden long enough, I decided. I'll testify. Fully. Let them know who JS is. Jessica paused. It'll make news. Your art world reputation will go public. Good. Maybe another young con artist will think twice before targeting someone they assume is weak because of age. After the call, I sat in my study surrounded by my hidden treasures. Basquiat, Herring, Banksy, rare stamps worth millions. For 15 years, I'd hidden this to protect Amanda. Now, revealing it would protect others. The testimony would be my final move, not from shadows, but in full light. Amanda arrived at Blue Bottle Cafe on Hayes Street at 2 p.m. Michael was already there, transformed from the polished entrepreneur who'd once courted her. Unshaven, clothes that hung loose on his frame, dark circles carved beneath his eyes like bruises. He stood when she entered. Tears, real or performed, filled his eyes. Amanda, thank you for giving me this chance. She sat, her posture guarded. Bob Chen was 2 tables away, absorbed in his newspaper, the recording device active in his jacket pocket. Through the window, she could see her father's car parked across the street, exactly where he'd promised. Michael launched into his prepared speech. I've had time to think, what I did, what I became. His voice cracked authentically. Jennifer, she pushed so hard. She's always been about money, status. I got caught up in her plans. But my feelings for you were real. Are real. He reached for her hand across the table. She didn't pull away immediately, but didn't return the gesture either. Michael, I heard what you said to Jennifer. The nursing home plan. Using me to control my father. How do you explain that? He'd rehearsed this answer. I was performing for her. She was pressuring me. Said if I didn't have a concrete plan, she'd back out of helping with wedding expenses. I said what she wanted to hear. I never meant it. Almost convincing. Amanda's expression softened slightly. The note I gave my father, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. I loved you. And I love you. Michael leaned forward, intensity replacing tears. We can start over. Maybe not here, not in San Francisco, but somewhere. I'll rebuild my life. I'll prove to you. Then he made the mistake. Your father. He's not what he seems, is he? I've heard things. Rumors about money, art, collections. Is it true? His eyes sharpened despite the performance of contrition. Because if it is, Amanda, if you just talk to him, explain that I've changed, that I need help getting back on my feet. It wouldn't be for me. It would be for us, for our future. The moment crystallized for Amanda with perfect clarity. She stood calmly, placed her coffee cup at the table's edge, the prearranged signal, and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even her. It was never about me, not 6 months ago, not at the wedding, not now. You don't love me, Michael. You love what you think you can get through me. Michael's facade cracked like dropped porcelain. He stood, his voice rising. Amanda, wait. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Your father destroyed me. He has millions, millions, and he's letting me starve. People in the cafe turned to stare. I just need a chance. Just some help. Amanda walked toward the door, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space. Don't contact me again. Don't write. Don't call. We're done. She crossed the street to her father's car, got in the passenger seat. They sat in silence while she processed what had happened. Finally, she spoke. You were right about all of it. He asked me to get money from you. Even now, even after everything, it was about money. James covered her hand with his. I'm sorry you had to see it, but I'm proud of you for facing it. I'm not sorry. I needed to see it myself. If I'd just taken your word, part of me would always wonder. Now I know. His phone rang as they drove home. Bob's voice was quietly satisfied. Got everything on audio. He violated the restraining order spirit by trying to use her to reach you, and he admitted investigating your wealth. This is usable. Keep it safe. After Amanda left the cafe, Michael returned to his studio apartment, rage and humiliation burning through the careful performance he'd constructed. He called Jennifer. She knows about the money. Someone told her the old man is rich, really rich. We targeted the wrong level. We should have gone bigger, planned better. Jennifer's voice cut through like glass. We? There is no we. You ruined this? Even at the cafe, you couldn't help yourself. You had to ask about money. Mutual friends saw the whole thing. You're pathetic. This was your idea. You found Amanda. And you executed it badly. I'm done, Michael. Don't call me again. Her voice went cold. When the DA's office calls, I'm cooperating. I'm not going down for your mistakes. She hung up. Michael sat alone in the apartment that had become his prison. Everything lost. Money, reputation, his sister. Any chance of salvaging anything. His phone rang. Public Defender's Office returning his call about the IRS investigation. Mr. Bradford, I've reviewed your case. The evidence of fraudulent loan applications is substantial. Tax evasion charges are likely. You're looking at potential jail time. The walls were closing in. That evening, Jessica called James with the news he'd been expecting. The DA is filing charges. Tax fraud, loan fraud. They want you to testify at the preliminary hearing. 3 weeks, July. Will I have to explain who I am? My resources? If Michael's attorney tries to claim you're just a vindictive old man exaggerating the threat? Yes, you'll need to establish your actual financial status and why his plan was credible. Jessica paused. This is when the JS reveal happens, James. In court, on the record. Your choice. Do it, or I can try to keep it sealed. James looked at Amanda, who'd been listening. She nodded firmly. Do it, Dad. Let everyone know who you really are. You've hidden long enough. Michael thought you were nobody. Show him. Show everyone the truth. James made his decision. I'll testify. Fully. Let them know who JS is. I'm done hiding. It'll make news, Jessica warned. Chronicle will cover the hearing. Your art world reputation will go public. Good. Maybe it'll help someone else. Maybe another young con artist will think twice before targeting someone they assume is weak because of age. After the call, James sat in his study, surrounded by the collection he'd built over decades. Basquiat on one wall, herring above the fireplace, rare stamps and protective albums, each one a treasure he'd hunted and acquired with patience and precision. For 15 years, he'd hidden this world to give Amanda a normal childhood. Now, revealing it would serve a greater purpose, protection for others, a warning to predators who saw age as weakness. The testimony would be his final move, not from the shadows where he'd operated as JS for so many years, but in full light, claiming his identity and his power. Michael Bradford had tried to cage a lion, thinking he'd found a helpless old man. In 3 weeks, in a courtroom, James would show him exactly what kind of predator he'd awakened. The game was almost over, and James held all the pieces. The bankruptcy hearing was routine until Michael saw me in the gallery. He was sitting at the defendant's table while the trustee reviewed his Chapter 7 filing. $2.3 million in debts. Assets. A laptop, some clothes, nothing of value. The fraudulent loan applications were being examined when Michael noticed me sitting 3 rows back. He stood suddenly, his chair scraping loud in the quiet courtroom. This is his fault, his voice cracked with desperation. That old man destroyed my life. He canceled my wedding, turned my fiancée against me, called my creditors, ruined my reputation, all because he's a bitter, lonely pensioner who couldn't stand to lose his daughter. The judge, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair, called for order. Jessica stood smoothly. Your Honor, Mr. Bradford is making serious allegations. Perhaps Mr. Smith should be allowed to respond and clarify his actual circumstances. The judge studied me. Mr. Smith, please approach the witness stand. I walked forward, was sworn in, took my seat. Michael glared at me from his table, breathing hard. Mr. Smith, the judge said, please explain your relationship to this case. I spoke calmly, deliberately. I'm James Smith. I'm 65 years old. I live in Richmond District, San Francisco. For the past 15 years, I've lived modestly to give my daughter a normal childhood. I paused. But Mr. Bradford is mistaken about who I am. Michael leaned forward. In the art world, I'm known as JS. For 25 years, I was one of the most active dealers in contemporary art on the West Coast. I built a private collection valued at over $50 million. The courtroom went silent. Michael's mouth fell open. I continued, my voice steady. Mr. Bradford targeted my daughter believing I was a vulnerable pensioner with modest savings. He planned to institutionalize me to access what he thought was maybe $500,000. I looked directly at him. He had no idea. My collection includes works by Basquiat, Haring, early Banksy pieces. My philatelic collection alone is worth $8 million. The painting Mr. Bradford walked past in my living room every time he visited? An authenticated Keith Haring worth $2.5 million. He thought it was a poster. Jessica approached with a folder. Your Honor, documentation. Authentication certificates, insurance policies, auction records. The judge reviewed the papers. Michael's face cycled through horror, humiliation, rage. He stood again, shouting, You had $50 million, and you let me think. You were playing me the whole time. Jessica's voice was ice. No, Mr. Bradford, you were playing yourself. Mr. Smith was living his life. You chose to target him and his daughter. The judge cut in sharply. Mr. Bradford, sit down. The court recognizes that Mr. Smith had every right to protect himself and his daughter from your scheme. The evidence of your fraudulent intent is overwhelming. I added one final statement. I lived modestly by choice, to protect my daughter from people like you. Turns out, even modesty wasn't enough protection. But I'm done hiding now. The world can know who I am, because people need to understand that age doesn't equal vulnerability, and that underestimating someone based on appearances is always a mistake. The courtroom erupted with whispers. Court reporters were typing frantically. Someone in the back was texting. By evening, the San Francisco Chronicle had the full story. Mystery collector J.S. revealed as James Smith, art world legend, foiled fortune hunter's plot. The article was comprehensive. The canceled wedding, Michael's scheme, the bankruptcy. My collection with photos of the Haring, selected stamps, a Basquiat. Quotes from art world figures expressing excitement about finally knowing J.S.'s identity. My phone rang constantly. Interview requests, art publication features, museum exhibition proposals. Bob stopped by that evening, grinning. You're a celebrity now. How does it feel? Strange. I hid for 15 years. Now everyone knows. I poured us both whiskey. But maybe that's right. Maybe transparency is better protection than secrecy. Amanda read the online comments aloud. They're calling you a protective genius, and Michael perhaps the most incompetent con artist in San Francisco history. I smiled slightly. A week later, Jessica called with the final details. Michael accepted a plea deal, 18 months federal prison for tax fraud. He'll be sentenced next week. Jennifer's bankruptcy is final. She lost everything. It's over then. It's over. You won, James. I looked at Amanda, who was sketching in her journal, something she hadn't done in months, a sign she was healing. No, I said quietly. It's not over. It's beginning. Now we figure out what comes next, how we use this to help others. 2 letters had arrived that afternoon, one from a minimum security facility, one from an East Bay address. Amanda had seen the return addresses. They wrote to you, she'd said. I'd set them aside on my desk. Not today. Let them sit. Some conversations require the right timing. Now, in the evening quiet, I looked at those envelopes. Michael and Jennifer, writing from their separate defeats. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow I'd read what they had to say. Tonight, I sat with my daughter and watched her sketch, and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 months. Peace. 3 weeks passed before I opened the letters. It was a Saturday morning, late August. Amanda brought me coffee and said quietly, "Are you going to read them?" I picked up the first envelope. Michael's handwriting, return address from federal prison. "Mr. Smith, I'm writing this from a place I never imagined I'd be. 18 months feels like forever when you have nothing but time to think about your mistakes. I was blinded by greed. I looked at you and saw a target instead of a person. I looked at Amanda and saw access instead of the woman I claimed to love. You were right to stop the wedding. You were right about everything. You gave me a lesson I'll never forget. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But Amanda deserves to know I understand what I did to her, and I'm sorry. I hope she finds someone worthy of her. It was never me." Jennifer's letter was shorter, written on cheap paper. "Mr. Smith, I've lost everything. My license, my career, my savings, my brother, my reputation. I'm working in a call center making $11 an hour. Some mornings I don't want to get up. But I do, because I have to live with what I've done. You had every right to stop us. We planned something cruel and thought we'd get away with it because you were older and seemed alone. We were wrong about your circumstances, but more importantly, we were wrong about who you are as a person. Thank you for not destroying me completely when you could have. I'll spend years paying my debts, but at least I'm free. That's more than I deserve." Amanda asked, "What will you do?" I thought carefully. Then I wrote 2 responses. To Michael, "Your apology is accepted. Use these 18 months to become someone different. The doors to my life and Amanda's are closed permanently, but the doors forward are always open if you choose to walk through them honestly. Learn from this." To Jennifer, "Your apology is accepted. Rebuild your life with integrity. Stay away from my family, but know that I don't wish you continued suffering. What you did was wrong. Your consequences are appropriate, but consequences aren't forever. Character changes are. Choose to be better than you were." I signed both simply James Smith. Amanda read them. "You're not forgiving them exactly. I'm releasing them. There's a difference. Forgiveness would mean restored relationship. I'm not offering that. But I'm acknowledging their apologies and telling them to move forward. Justice doesn't mean I have to hate them forever. They paid the price. Now they need to do something useful with whatever comes next." That evening we attended the charity exhibition at the De Young Museum. My collection was displayed with full authentication and provenance. The herring from my living room, several Basquiat works, the early Banksy, selections from my rare stamp collection under glass. Each piece had a small placard showing its value. The exhibition was titled "Wisdom and Worth, Protecting America's Seniors." I gave a short speech to the assembled crowd, San Francisco Society, collectors, elder advocacy groups, media. I hid this collection for 15 years to protect my daughter. Then someone tried to use my daughter to steal from me anyway. I'm showing you this tonight, not to boast, but to make a point. Appearances deceive. Age doesn't mean vulnerability. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. Don't underestimate people, and don't prey on those you think can't fight back. Sometimes they fight back perfectly. Applause filled the gallery. Later, I watched Amanda talking with Jacob, the young museum curator who'd helped organize the show. Early 30s, genuinely enthusiastic about art, asking intelligent questions about provenance and collecting philosophy. They'd been seeing each other for a few weeks. I'd noticed but said nothing, letting her make her own choices. He was explaining the significance of a Basquiat piece, and Amanda was smiling. Really smiling. Not the forced smile she'd worn with Michael. Bob approached, following my gaze. "That's the curator, right? He seems better than the last one." "Substantially better. He hasn't asked about my net worth once." Bob laughed. "Low bar, but fair." Jessica joined us. "So, JS, now that you're public, what's next?" "I'm thinking about making this fund permanent. Maybe establishing a foundation, using the collection to teach people about protecting themselves. Seems like a better legacy than sitting in my living room." The exhibition ended. Amanda and I drove home together. "I'm proud of you, Dad. You could have just called the police. Instead, you taught them a lesson they'll never forget, protected other people from them, and turned it all into something positive. I had resources they didn't expect. Not everyone does. That's why the fund matters, helping people who don't have $50 million to protect themselves. At home, I returned to my study, pulled out a new acquisition, a penny black 1840 stamp I'd purchased at auction for $300,000. I examined it through my magnifying glass, the detail incredible even after 185 years. I thought about the past 5 months, the canceled wedding, the investigation, the legal battles, the JS reveal, the victory, but mostly I thought about Amanda, safe, healing, learning to trust again but more carefully. The stamp went into its protective sleeve. The album closed. Life continues. I'm no longer hiding. The people who tried to use me are living with the consequences of underestimating wisdom, experience, and a father's love. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't destroying them. It was living well, openly, and making sure they could never do it again. That's justice. That's enough. Through the window, San Francisco lights twinkled in the dusk. Somewhere in that city, Michael sat in prison learning hard lessons. Jennifer worked late at a call center. They were living with consequences, but they were living. That's grace. The album on the shelf contained millions in stamps. The walls held millions in art. But the real treasure was in the next room. My daughter, safe and happy and wise now. That's the victory that matters. I turned off the study light and walked toward the sound of Amanda's laughter. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.